Shields, who is an outdoor survivalist leadership teacher and a brother-in-law. I love having Jim on. We've had other discussions in the past a couple of times on his podcast, and we've had many discussions about his voyages, but I thought it was a great time to bring Jim on to the Massive Action podcast because he does nothing else but take massive action towards survivalists and sharing the work to the world about how to become a better survivalist, from kids to adults to anyone in between. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Kenny. Quite an intro. I appreciate it. Massive Action. That's the name. That's the name, right?
Yeah.
I love that.
Massive Action.
I like that you said like Massive Action. I feel like even though I don't really know what you do, I feel like you take massive action. So it's like the perfect name. Yeah, I mean that. And like also, you know, as you kind of were talking about, like I do like to take big steps. You know, there's a lot of when you get into like my field, teaching, survival, bushcraft, or whatever. I like to also take big steps and do big things. Like really put yourself out there and see how far you can go. And I've hit limits, sometimes quicker than I expected. But you know, working in the field that I work in is it's kind of unique because I work in a public school and I do survival and bushcraft and leadership. Those three things. But it's not, anytime I talk to somebody about, oh, you're a survival teacher, they think I live in the middle of Alaska or some like fancy private school, some outdoor thing. And I'm like, no, it's Hatboro Horsham Public High School. And it's like, yes, I did create my own like outdoor classroom and stuff, which is awesome. But it's something that I worked really hard and pitched for years before they were like, yeah, let's try that.
Yeah. So. No, it's super unique, actually. I've never really heard many other schools, public or private, having the opportunity to do that. But the one thing that you said earlier, which was you like pushing your limits, that is really, really unique. And I think that especially with kids at a younger age, when they don't really understand where their limits are and it's personal, like a personal development limit. When you set a goal and you help set goals in class that kind of align with building team-oriented structure or personal development structure, they don't know how difficult it is to hit that goal. But then they'll find their limit and you help them expand that and create new limits.
Yeah.
And I think that, going back to what you said earlier in regards to massive action, I think that aligns with massive action a lot. People who are taking massive action are going to do things that go beyond the ordinary limit. Yeah. And I think that it's important to push yourself beyond that because you aren't living to your maximum potential and no one really knows what that potential is. So it's important to figure that out and continue taking different steps to investigating what that limit is and what needs to be done to get you to higher levels.
I like that you said that, like, and working with students, right? So like one thing you just said is, you know, nobody really knows what their limit is. I know that you and I have talked about this before, like the David Goggins remove the governor thing. Like everyone's like, oh, I went as hard as I could. And then you listen to David Goggins and you're like, no, I didn't. You're like, oh, wait. Yeah. And he's telling us that he's not even going as hard as he can. And I'm like, you're not? Because your foot's broken and you just ran 60 miles on a broken leg. You know what I mean? So it's like, when I deal with students now, not just in survival, I teach a leadership class too. A lot of times, and you made me think of this when you just said this, but like a lot of times they're like, you know, man, I can't wait till I'm done college. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I'm like, well, tell me more about like what you want to do. They're like, well, I want to start, you know, I want to help kids in, you know, I remember talking a few years ago about this with this one kid. He was from India and he's like, you know, he's like, sex trafficking is like a big thing. And he's like, I really want to help people that have whatever families. I'm like, it's like, that's cool. That's a good goal. And what's stopping you from starting today?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you start today? So it's like, and I get it. I mean, there are reasons and limitations with a 16, 17-year-old kid in high school, but is there? I mean, I don't know. It's like, it's almost like kids have this built-in mindset of where we don't start till we're done college.
Yeah.
We don't start till we get this certification, where that's not how it works. It's
agree.
like start now because you want it. Start now, test your limits, go after those things. And trying to get kids to believe in that is tricky, but you can.
I think it's tricky because they're in an environment that's cultivated to make everybody believe that they have to wait to the next thing or to pass a certain barrier in order to be able to do this next thing. And it's not even just kids in high school, middle school. It's as simple as I'm going to get started on my diet on Monday.
Yeah.
It's Thursday. Why Monday?
Yeah.
Like, why not start now? Like, it doesn't make sense. Which is actually funny because you said that earlier.
Yeah.
That you had someone tell you that they were going on a 48-hour fast, and you were like, me too. Just because you woke up and you were 12 hours in.
Yeah. Okay. So let's be honest. I've been down here for a few days, and I do a pretty strict diet at home and this and that. But when I go on vacation, this is my biggest problem. It's like the cart has left the stable. The horse is running free into the town now. It's like, I'm out of the track. I'm going nuts. And it's like, okay, let's eat, drink, do this, do that. And then, I'll go back home and I know it's going to go back to normal. But I'm like, this morning at breakfast, my one friend who I just had on my podcast recently, his name's Mike Capusta. He got me into a lot of different things, but he's like, yeah, dude. And he just said out of nowhere, he's like, I'm like 48 hours into this like 50-hour fast. And I literally just read that like this morning and I'm like, I'm doing that. But maybe I will, maybe I won't. I mean, I'm drinking coffee, I'm drinking water. So I literally just woke up a few hours ago. So it's like, I haven't really I'm like 4 hours, from when you're hungry. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, you're moving along that line. I haven't been much of an aid to that too, because I'm like, let's go to this place and let's go to this place, and you have to try this place, but this place is really good too.
Let's go to Rocco's Tacos. Let's go to Roxy's. Let's go there. Eat breakfast at Yoke.
Yeah, I haven't been much of a help with the whole fasting or even eating healthy in that perspective.
It's not your fault.
Trying to give you the full experience of West Palm Beach.
Yeah, I've been getting that, and it's like, a lot of opportunities down here to eat and go crazy, and also to be healthy. But that's more of like you said, like we're getting back to what we're talking about, like having that control. And instead of starting, why start Monday? Why don't I start right now? Like, why do I have to, or why does anybody have to like go off the rails when you go away? Where do you lose that self-control? How do you maintain that control when you go away or get out of your normal?
I have friends who are very fitness oriented, and I have friends that came from college sports, and some of them went to professional, and some of them that own gyms. I have a friend that'll be on in a couple of weeks on the Massive Action podcast, and he is very regimented with what he eats and dieting and structure, which is it's his lifestyle. Yeah. He owns a CrossFit facility, so he's very regimented in that fashion. But it's really hard. It takes a lot of discipline, and it's not motivation, because it's not fun when you go out to eat with 4 or 5 other people and you're like, yeah, I will have the rice and grilled chicken when everybody else is having burgers and fries. And it does take a very specific mentality, but also more so making sure that you're dedicated to it. And you know that you're going to have to turn a lot of things down. But when you have that goal, and again, going back to what really Massive Action stands for, you have that goal, and you understand what you need to do to get there, and you are just dedicated to making sure that you hit that. And of course, you're going to hit barriers along the way, which are limits, really, and then passing that. But the one thing that's really unique about what you were saying earlier is I don't think that a lot of kids hear that enough, that they don't really hear someone asking them, why are you doing this? And then ask them, why now? Or why not now? And push them over that limit of saying, yeah, you can start this now. You don't need to wait the next 4 years or 5 years until you're graduating high school. You could do that today.
Yeah.
And the things that you think are stopping you aren't really there.
Yeah.
They're fake or imaginated elements of someone else's belief.
Yeah.
And it's false beliefs, if anything.
It is true. I mean, you hear it a lot, you see it a lot. Another thing like going along with that, at school, sometimes I feel even funny saying this, but in the 2 main classes that I teach, I don't put any emphasis on grading. At first, when I first started straying away from grading, like I have to put grades in. Yeah. It's part of my job. I have to put them in. But I found that it was like fake motivation, and I wanted to see what's really in there, because I don't want you to do this because you need this A, or you need this to happen. I want you to do it because you are interested in it, or I want you to do it. I want you to, when we're talking about like a survival skill, Like I could go out there and, all right, well, you're able to use this ferro rod, and okay, good job. You were able to collect the right amount of sticks. You're going to get. I don't like. It's more of creating an experience.
Yeah.
So I'm big into experiential education. Like if you think back in your life, you don't remember the grade. Like you might remember some grades, but you don't remember getting graded on something or whatever. You remember like an experience that a teacher maybe gave for you, or something you did that they set up. And that's what I try to set up across the board every day, a unique and fun experience. And really the question that I had in the beginning was, can kids still learn without a grade? And I asked them that a lot. Like,
Good question.
do you need a grade for you to learn this? Like, who am I proving this to? You, your parents, the administrators, myself? I think if you do it right, there is a way to do it. Now, I also see that in other types of classes, English, biology, you have to probably have exams and tests and all that stuff. I see where it comes in. But for what I do, very hands-on, things like that, I'm just more like, let's have a fun experience that you remember. And I'm going to know if you're doing it or not correctly. And so are you, because you're going to be able to cook your, rice and beans over the fire if you start it. And if you don't do it right, you're not going to have a fire.
Yeah, of course. It's interesting. I think we talked about this before too, but those aspects where school and the common grading system is helping you understand how to retain information and then place that information, spit it back out onto a test in some type of written form, and then be graded on that. It's really just a sense of how good is your short-term memory and how good are you at absorbing content and putting it back on paper.
Yeah.
But the top performers in those classes, when I studied science in university, those were not the same top performers in lab. It was almost completely reverse.
Yeah.
The people that were leveraging their skills in lab, in those real life activities, that's where they were really good at lab. But then when it came back to the tests, they weren't terrible, but they weren't getting 100 on an organic chemistry exam.
Yeah.
They were expanding on their skills in lab, and they were just naturally great. So it's really interesting, those skillful life lessons, which I think we should be taught much earlier and are much more important.
Yeah.
That I never actually had, because we didn't have anybody that brought us on a leadership type of program or survivalist type of program in any year of grade school. But I wish that happened, because that would have been a great experience.
It's tricky to see. Like, I feel like we are definitely behind in education overall. Like you could look at other countries, and I don't know. I mean, I can't rattle off stats and stuff like that, but I know other countries that are doing much better than us on testing and just overall seem to be smarter. Their education systems are different. A lot of people will say like the United States has a broken education system, and you can see that, but it's like, how do you fix it and still have like a public education? Like a lot of other countries are like, oh, you don't want to work in 7th grade. Okay, you're going to go work in this, become a carpenter or become a plumber or whatever. Not that that's a bad thing. Maybe that makes a lot more sense. But in public education, it's tricky because we're trying to squeeze a lot of these round pegs inside of these like triangle holes. And it's like, it doesn't always fit,
I think that the structure of knowledge is really important, right? You have to have a base foundation of understanding about a topic, right? So let's say you're an architect, which neither of us have experience in, I don't think.
No,
other than
I built a treehouse. It's not square.
Yeah.
So
it's stable enough to stand in. So
still standing.
Better than nothing. Let's say you have a base understanding of that, right? Architecture. I think that's really good, but understanding the base structure of it is only going to get you so far. Because when you apply that structure of knowledge in a real world scenario, in a real life scenario, then there's things that are going to happen, right? The wood isn't as strong as you think it is. The beams don't support the way that this works over rock opposed to sand. There's just so many different variables that come into play. And it has to be experienced. And I think that the knowledge and experience is far more grand than just a base structure of textbook style knowledge.
Right.
And the experience is not going to come from a classroom setting. It's going to come from real world, practical experimenting and action.
Yeah.
And I think that's where traditional methods lack, is the actual instilling of practices and experience and continuously doing things in real life scenarios.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, so much of, in high school, so many kids are AP this, honors. They're so focused on that because they have to get into that Harvard or MIT or at least be, those private schools and all this. And a lot of those top kids will shy away sometime from my like leadership program, not necessarily the outdoor program, but the leadership program, because they don't have time to fit it in their schedule. But the funny thing is, the kids that do fit it in their schedule, we're doing a lot of experiential stuff. So I'll set up some of the things we do, like, okay, you're going to run an activity today for the whole class. And they're like, wait, what? What do you mean? What do you mean, wait, what? Like, figure it out. You're going to be in charge of all 25 of us. And from beginning to end, introduction. And they're basically teaching. They're leading a group. And they're not good at it at first, but it's also expected. And then building them up over the course of the year to where not only are they like, crushing that environment, they're going off to, we're going to elementary schools and the middle schools, and they're running like large scale assemblies. And it's like, as I've talked to parents that are very successful, and have had students that have been through our Link Crew program, the leadership program. And they're like, this is why we support your program so much, is because you're giving our children that extra step that, I remember talking to this one guy. He's like, I go to all these job fairs at Penn State. All the kids from the honors program, they're all the same. They're all exactly the same. They have perfect grades, this, that, but they don't have this. They're not able to come in, and they don't understand how to like, get people to smile and shake their hand and like run a meeting, and like, cause those kids have been, their noses have been in the book for so long. They're really good at the architectural. Go back to that. They really know all that stuff. But when it comes to like, when I came in here today, you're running a call and whatever, you got other things going on. You're handling your business. You have skills in that area. And I feel like the skills that you have, that you exhibit all the time, are the skills that I feel are lacking in school. And I try to like promote that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't learn it in school.
I know you got it. So you got it somewhere.
I just doing. And one thing that you said that's like, I don't even know how, this is probably one of the most important aspects to building a team. And I honestly don't even think it matters what type of team this is, whether it's a team, whether it's an Olympic team in some type of sporting event, or it's a team of world-renowned business professionals. I think the one characteristic, the one trait that is excessively important comes from a couple of words that you just said, which is someone who has the ability to figure it out. Because if someone could pivot, adjust, make a fast but knowledgeable adjustment in the way that something is done, right? And it usually comes at times where someone is not prepared. Things that you can't prepare for. Like a kid who comes into class, he thinks you're going to teach the class, and now he all of a sudden, or she all of a sudden, has to pick up the class structure.
They're in a hot seat.
Yeah, they're in culture shock.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, whatever happens between the point that you tell them, hey, you're running class today, and the end of the class period is almost like a fast track of experience and knowledge.
Yes.
And I think that's the only reason that I have been able to do what I do, is because I've put myself in those positions, and I've learned that being in those positions are solely have been able to place me in a way that I learn what maybe someone can learn in 3 years, but I learned it in 3 hours. Because you're forcing yourself, and then you don't forget it. It's almost like a scar. You don't forget that. It's just happening so fast. You really become ingrained in the process, and you build this element to yourself. Maybe it's a factor of personal development and passion and self-confidence, where you're like, I know how to do that now.
Yeah,
and you don't forget that. I did it, and I don't forget that.
Yeah.
And that, so powerful.
It is so powerful. And it's making me think of like, it can be a little tricky. Like I loosely follow this theory. It's the Bruce Tuckman theory of group development. And in general, and I'm not an expert on it, but in general, it's like when you are dealing with a group, whatever the group is, if you come in too hot right away, like if I were to say, like, I just met this kid and I'm like, get out there, you're teaching now, they'd be like, that's too hot.
Yeah.
That's high risk, super high risk. But the way that I like to follow this model is like, if you've worked your way up a little bit to where you develop some trust and you start with low risk activities to, a couple days, maybe a couple weeks in, this kid is then put on the spot and yeah, they're going to feel that, I don't know if I'm ready, like whatever. And then they do it. Like you said before, I did it. They have that in the bank. They may not realize that this now, but once they do it again, they're going to refer back to be like, I did this once. I can take another step.
Yeah.
And then as a leader, one of the things I try to do, no matter what happens, whether it sucks, it's awesome, or somewhere in the middle, support them and be like, you know what? That was pretty good, man. That was your first try? Like, dude, you did that. Like, and then support them. And that's everything. You can go back to any coach you had, parent, teacher, whatever, anyone is listening. Like, that is what matters. And if you can be that, dude, that was awesome. That, like, you may not think that's important. That's it. That's everything.
I think this is why sports is so powerful to kids, because these experiences are just a part of a sports environment, right? Like soccer or basketball or anything, football. You run a play. How often does that play go? I guess the answer to this is every time that play goes perfectly as it's supposed to, it ends up in a goal, a score, whatever, right? So, but how often does that happen, right? You can run that same play 30 times. It might work 10% of the time. But the 90% it doesn't is the case scenario where you're like, oh crap, I have to pivot. I have to do something about it. I have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that figure it out moment just becomes so powerful for you. And then you just continue to build that figure it out. People that have the ability to enter a situation, something happens, they figure it out and still accomplish the goal are unique and very powerful people.
Yeah. And it's like, isn't that the only thing that life is?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
you've been through a lot. I've been through a lot. Like, even if it's like a small scenario, like I just redid my kid's bathroom. Have no idea what I'm doing. YouTube video after YouTube video. It looks way better than before. But it's not right. Like my construction friends would be like, dude, why did you do it that? Like they would notice some things, but it looks good. But all it was, you open one wall, it's like, oh, there's a new problem. Like, damn, I didn't expect to do this. Then you address that problem. And then there's like, oh, shoot, I just took this up. Now there's that. It's nonstop. And it's like at some point you just have to come up with a solution that works. Yeah. It may not always be perfect, but it gets you moving forward.
That brings up something I was talking about today. This was specifically in a marketing case scenario, but I remember this diagram one time, and there was 4 points on it. It was like a square, right? And on the top left, it was A, top right, B, bottom right, C, bottom left, D. Mm-hmm. And your goal is to get from A to D. And you can get from A to D by going from A to B to C to D, mm-hmm. from A to D, from A to B to D, A, B, C. Like there's so many different ways, right? But the theory is that there's not one way to get from A to D. There's a variety of ways to get there. We have access to information easier and faster than ever before. Mm-hmm. So when you pull up that tile and you're like, oh, I got to figure out this problem. Like you just pick up your phone, YouTube it, Google it, find a solution. There's about 65 different ways. There's the AB way, there's the ABCD way, there's the ACD way. There's so many different ways. Find the way that's going to be best for you and your situation and run with it.
Yeah.
And it's just like almost, there should be no excuse to be able to say like, I can't. We have the information. We have the ability. We have somewhat of the knowledge, even if it's something that you're not super familiar with.
Yeah.
All you need to do is figure it out.
I know. And it's like, you see so many people, like even, I have kids and it's like they spend so much time on like their phones watching like TikToks and, which is probably good for your business, but like you want people on, but it's like, dude, what if you like, just took 10% of your time that you're on there and figured out a skill, like something. And like my oldest son does, he learned how to do video editing and stuff by watching YouTube videos, and that's cool.
Yeah, it's great.
But it's like kids are mainly just doom scrolling or whatever, and it's all out there. I mean, it really is, and that's kind of fascinating. For some reason, when you were telling that ABCD thing, maybe loosely correlates, but I'm going back to, this is probably in the year, if I had to guess, it would be like 1993. You were how old?
0.
0. You weren't born yet. But I had this in 1993. I worked at this like, it was like a telemarketing center with like my best friend, Mike, at the time. And I worked for the Nicorette Committed Quitters program. So I'm like 15 and people are like, I'm helping people quit smoking. It's absurd. And like I'm on the other line reading a script. It's so funny. Anyway, we had this training with this one lady the one time. Her name was Ida, and she must have been in her 80s. And she was like, she'd been around for a while, but we just started like becoming computerized or whatever. I'll never forget. Like we knew because we were in like 10th grade or 11th grade, like how to use a computer, like kind of. But
Yeah.
I'll never forget this. She took the mouse and she was like, there was like 5 of us around, and me and my buddy Mike, we played football together. We're like watching her, and she's about to show us something. And we see the cursor on the screen. She goes like this. And she goes, it's not moving. And I'm like, in that moment, I'm like, holy crap. Like, that's crazy. Like, but I just learned how to use a mouse like 6 months ago or whatever. So I don't know. And she'll figure that little thing out and build upon it and all that. And I honestly, I don't think she's around anymore. She'd be like 120. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's not directly in direct correlation to what you said, but it made me think of that, and it was kind of a funny story. So anyway.
That was funny. That's actually really funny. But that's part of the process, and I think that's what it stops a lot of people is they're afraid to look awkward or they're afraid to look a certain way. But like you have to not be afraid of looking odd if you move the mouse like this. Of course, today in 2023, it's just not happening. But I don't know. Maybe some people move a mouse like that.
I don't know. Maybe like with AI or not AI. What is it? Oculus type stuff. Like,
yeah. Now they're like moving it and it's moving their whole body in another dimension.
Maybe she was ahead of our time.
Yeah, maybe. Possible.
No, it's it is crazy. Something what did you just say? It made me.
It's part of the process.
Yeah, it's part of the process. There was a thought that came into my head, but I can't think of it. Yeah, it's gone.
But I think that has to happen. And I think that your fear of that happening you become numb to it in a sense. Because if you let fear stop you from doing things, like just because of my academic background, I am very analytical. I'm very process oriented. I mean, that's just how everything was in biology. Like you need to take step by step by step by step, right? And record everything in that process. But by doing that, you'll just take forever to do things. Like, especially when it comes to like posting a video. There's times I'm like, this looks good, click. And I purposely on my own click that faster than I allow myself to think about that process. Cause I know that if I watch it again, I'm going to go back, want to edit something or tell Ty, hey, this is like going on. And I'm just like, post it. I'd rather post it and allow it to do its thing and run its course than for me to be over analytical.
That's interesting.
Because what's that, like paralysis or like
analysis by paralysis?
That's
something like
the
that.
definition of it. Yeah. And that will happen if I don't just let it happen. So I will like call to click someone or I'll call to post something faster than I can allow that process to happen. You
know what's funny about that is sometimes, and you've probably seen this more than me, but in my past, couple years doing like videos, like TikTok videos, YouTube videos, the ones that I spend a lot of time on, I'm like, this is going to kill it. And I'll go back, I'm like checking it every day. I'm like, ooh, 30 views, 34 views. And then I'll be like, screw it. I'll make like a video in class of how to tie this knot that I've done 1,000 times. I'm like, I give my iPhone to some kid. I'm like, dude, film this real quick. 30-second short. It's like 10,000 views. Yeah. Like by the end of the day, I'm like, what the? I didn't do anything to this. I didn't even edit it. It didn't even go into a program. It's just from so sometimes it's better to just upload it.
And that's half the problem. Every time you do that, you spend more time. It's just like, you should have just posted it.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know. And you don't know what's on the other side of it. So just do it. Because taking action is going to lead to more success than just overanalyzing and not doing anything.
Yeah. I think you get a lot of that. Like I get a lot of that in school. This is what I was thinking about. Like so many kids there's a fear because, we're older now and like I don't care as much as what people are saying or thinking, although you always do a little bit. But like when you're a 16, 17-year-old boy, girl, like that's at like the peak of that. You think everyone's watching you. And through like, say, like child psychology and stuff, even younger kids, like I know my kids when they're 10, 11, they're like, oh, everyone's looking at me. Like nobody's looking at you. Nobody cares. And that's pretty much what life is like. Nobody's ever really watching what you do like too much. So it's like, just be yourself and just go for it. Put yourself out there. Yeah, you're going to look stupid. Like, how could you ever not look stupid trying something for the first time?
Yeah.
And it's like, I tell kids that all the time, like, you know, and I've heard this from like, I don't know, Joe Rogan or some other podcast, like be the dumbest person in the room and like, be okay with that. Because the next time you come back, you might be the dumbest person in the room again, but not the third time, not the fourth time. And then all of a sudden people start asking you questions. Yeah. And I've been through that so many times in my life with so many different skills. It's unbelievable, but that's how you gain momentum, and that's how you gain confidence.
Yeah.
And then that's just how life works, it seems.
Just made me think of that quote that says, like, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Yeah, Michael Scott and then Wayne Gretzky. Or Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott. No, I remember that.
That's funny, yeah, Michael Scott.
Do you remember that? Because Michael Scott said that in the episode of The Office. I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh, I've watched every single one of them on Netflix. You can just watch all of them. I did years ago, but I don't remember that from Michael Scott, but that's hilarious.
Well, it's a great quote, and he brings it into a meeting, and he's like, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. And he puts a little line. It says Michael Scott. And then under that, it says Wayne Gretzky or vice versa. I forget, but it's still hilarious.
That is
it's like,
hilarious.
Just a comedic genius.
I watch those like episodes these days. And I'm like, I don't know how they got away with that, the stuff that they said, because they say the funniest stuff. And it's just like all of those guys and girls that are in that, just The Office, the whole scene is just awesome.
But now it'd be like canceled.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Michael Scott crosses the boundary many times, but it's just so funny. He's hilarious.
He is hilarious, but it is odd. Like they talk about sometimes like you can't even do comedies anymore, really. Like comedies don't really come out. And it's like, whether it's shows or movies, I don't know. We're in this weird time of like everything getting canceled, and it's kind of annoying. Maybe there's some good parts of it, but I feel like maybe we're heading towards a rebound where people are like getting sick of it a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I've been seeing that more lately as well. One thing I want to kind of change courses here real quick and talk about some of the things that you do outside of school that show adversity and show you reaching your limit and building past that limit to find your ultimate potential. So can you talk on some of the things that you do in regards to survivalist? I've known you to have done a lot of different things, been to a lot of different places around the world, climbed different mountains, scuba diving, tons of different stuff.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some of those things?
Sure. You know, the outdoors is something that has always been like ingrained in my head in some way, in my soul. Even though as a kid, like I played in the woods, but I didn't have parents that are like, hey, we're going to Everest Base Camp this weekend, or we're going to go, summer in the Canadian Rockies. Like I didn't do any of that. I went to Wildwood and the beach at Jersey Shore once in a while, like once a year. But I can remember, going back as a kid when I could ride my bike around. I was like, when I get the chance, like when I get my license, I'm gonna drive to Florida. Like that was my big thing. Like, cause I'd never been anywhere. I'd never been on a plane. I'm like, I can't wait to go. And when I as a kid on my bike, I pushed the limits. Like I would ride my bike to farther than you're supposed to, farther than my mom ever knew. And she was pretty she was cool with it, I get. Yeah, it's pretty relaxed, but like it was definitely farther than I should. So I always had a spirit of adventure. When I was in college, I remember, I went to college and, I barely got into college, like had the super low SAT, super low GPA. I didn't even know what college was. I was going into the Army until my mom was like, you're not going in the Army. And she was like cursing out the drill instructor. Went off to college and kind of turned things around. But once I got done college, I'm like, I got to get out of here. And I found this job in Colorado working as a wilderness guide for like younger kids. And I'm like, this is awesome. So that was my first, at 21, that was my first real like taste of adventure. I remember flying out there and just like having no clue and just whatever. So the first 2 weeks we got out there, and I'm 21, and they put us through wilderness first aid training for like 2 days. And then we would go out into the mountains for a couple days and just learn different things, setting up this, tents, tarps, backpacking, basic stuff. The camp had been there forever. It's called Colvig Silver Camps. It still runs today in Durango, Colorado. Awesome.
Awesome.
So, I spent the summer there, man, just getting exposed to the 14ers, the desert, 14,000 foot mountains.
Yeah.
And it was just a life-changing thing. And sort of like what we've been talking about today, like I got that experience, like I got that confidence. I left after that, 5 months that I was out there thinking, I can go anywhere in the world. I know how to pack a backpack. I know how to set up a tent. I know how to cook now. I know how to purify water. Nothing survival related, which I got into later, but totally like, this is fun, man. I want to get after it. So then I go back to school for a little bit, started working on a master's degree, and right away I'm like, I got to get out of here. So then I moved to Alaska. I found another job. I definitely lied my way into this job, but going back to like, if I didn't, like I wouldn't have had the experience. So I don't know. It's just the way that I got there, and it's my journey. I told the guy that I had more experience with like guns than I actually had. I didn't have any. But I was working at, it was called Great Alaska Fish Camp and Safaris. So he's like, Jim, he's like, we need a safari guide. We're branching off from fishing to do more outdoors. I was like, I had the legitimate experience in Colorado, but that was pretty much it. So I got up there. I got a whole year of experience working as a guide and stuff. Came back from there, and I'm definitely giving the short version of this. Had a whole year's worth of experience in Alaska with grizzly bears and airplanes and Denali and just crazy, just life-changing stuff. If you've ever read the book Into the Wild, you ever hear that?
Yeah, definitely.
That's kind of why I went up there. Read that book. Chris McCandless got inspired. I'm like, dude, I got to get up there. Awesome. So, definitely got my feet wet in those two trips, and that set me up for a life of like, what's next? So I had this point like after Alaska where I'm like, all right, am I like going to become the next, am I all in here? Because they kind of offered me a job that like, you could work for Alaska in the summers and Costa Rica in the off season and kind of like live that life. And that's exciting to a 22-year-old.
That's pretty cool. Never thought about that.
It's pretty cool when you're 22. Now, when I'm 44 and I have a messed up hip and I'm kind of limping around and I think about that, I'm like, I think I did the right thing.
Yeah. I agree.
So one of the things, and I'm not going to talk forever, but basically one thing led to another. I got a teaching job and I kind of turned that into, I'm like, going back to even what we were saying before, like I've always said, make it happen. If you're not happy in the situation that you're in, well, then either get out of it or make it what you want it.
Yeah.
And maybe I wasn't as confident back then as I am now, but now that's all I do. Like, I don't care if someone says no. I don't care if someone says, oh, we can't do that. We'll never, that's silly. Like, we're going to do it.
Agreed.
And I'll show you how, because just watch. Anyway, and I'm sure I failed a lot too, but then you just go to the next thing. Right. Yeah. So I was like, all right, well, teaching's fine. And I was doing like technology, no offense, Ty, back there, but like I was hating it after a while. And I had all this experience in the outdoors and I'm like, dude, I got to bring this awesome stuff into this school. And I'm like, how do I do that? So I started an adventure club, started taking kids on short trips, long trips, all this, rock climbing, kayaking, blah, blah, blah. And after a while, I did that for a couple years. And I'm like, I got to turn this into like a class. Like, I don't want to just do this after school and on weekends. Like, I want to do this every day, all day. And I started looking around. I was like, what schools do this? None. Yeah. Or like some private school in like California or Colorado. But I was like, dude, I'm going to write a course and I'm going to make them tell me no until they tell me yes. And I found the right person. They told me no. But they said, you would even have to have a phys ed certification, Jim, to be able to do this. So I went and got a phys ed certification in a year. Came back. I was like, hey, I got that certification. I'm like, well, we're not really starting new classes and this is kind of like out there. I was like, yeah, but I've been doing the adventure club for 3 years now and look how popular it is. Like, I could put you guys on the map. Like, this could be a big thing. And like, I don't know. Whatever. Maybe the next year they're like, well, we'll give it a shot. After that moment, and that was like, I don't know, 12 years ago, it's been either the most popular elective or second most popular elective, and it's never stopped.
Wow.
And it's just been like this amazing ride of like awesomeness and development. And it's evolved into something like that not only is like been a great experience for so many kids, but also has helped like my life evolve into something special.
I just love how unique it is. It's just, you never hear of it. You never hear of people in a class structure, anything similar to that. I mean, especially in outside of like college where you have more freedom to do different classes and stuff like that, but not in a traditional public school environment. No.
Yeah.
Even private. I still don't know anybody in a class like that.
Yeah, it's like if you find it, you'll find it in like college. Like Bloomsburg University has the Quest program, and that's kind of what I modeled it after because that's where I went to college. And I was like, why don't we do this when they're younger? They're into it, they want to do it.
I'm sure universities have something like that. I think we had at Stetson University, I remember people growing crops in a farm or something like that. So there were programs out there, but that's when you can experience more, and it's more likely that there's a variety of kind of different or opposed to traditional class structures. There's different types of things to do.
Yeah.
But not in a traditional public school. So it's really cool that you were able to get that opportunity to do that and run with it for the last 10 years, 12 years.
Yeah. And I mean, I know I've told you, I know you are aware of this, but kind of like following along those lines, I got the opportunity to be on a reality show doing survival, which is just crazy because there was a point where I didn't know how to start a fire or even what anything was related to survival. And it's like, it really happened pretty quickly. Like my experience, like, cause when I started the outdoor program, it wasn't survival or bushcraft.
You say it so nonchalantly, but it's one of probably the most severe, like survivalist reality TV shows there is. It's probably the peak of what I would consider today a reality survivalist show.
Yeah.
Which is the show alone. And obviously being out there and being able to even get on that show is probably dramatically difficult.
Yeah. I mean, so I'll tell you how it went down. I came home from school one year and it was summer, and my wife, Jen, who's always been like, I didn't mention this, but she's always been this force that I sometimes forget to mention, but she's pushed me to do a lot of this, like in a positive way. Like, why don't you write that course? You love this stuff, do that. And I did. And even like we adopted kids. She was behind that and like, come on, like, let's do it, like whatever. So I came home one day and it was like the beginning of summer. You know, teachers were just chilling out in the summer, although people freak out if this. And like, no, we don't. We're planning. I'm like, all right, well, I chill out. So, because whatever, I just worked hard all year. It is whatever. It's the job. So I came home. I do a lot of stuff in the summer. It's not like I lay on the couch, but
it's the nature of it.
It's the nature of the job. Yeah. I want to explore. That's why I took the job, so I can go to Alaska in the summer and do whatever I want.
Yeah.
You can listen. A lot of teachers do. They work really hard all summer to get ready for the fall. And I'm like, nope. So anyway, we're sitting there one time and I didn't really like survival shows. And Jen's like, oh, you got to watch this show. I was like, I don't like those. So I sat down and watched it, and it was Alone. It just came out. It was season 1. And next thing you know, I was like, oh, this show's cool. We got into it together. We're watching like 3rd, 4th episode. And I remember it was still like the first week of summer. And she's like, you would be awesome at this show. She's like, with what you do. And she's like, you should apply. And I'm like, stop. And I'm like, that's stupid. Like, why would I? I hate these shows, and then whatever. So she goes to bed because she like goes to bed early and I stay up late in the summer. So she goes to bed. I'm like, get my laptop up. I'm like, start applying. I'm like looking for how you get on the show. And like, it just hit me. I was like, I have to apply. But I used to do wacky stuff. Like I would apply. I've probably told you this before. Like I used to apply for jobs in like New Zealand and Australia just to see if they would call me back. But like, I wouldn't even want to go there.
That's hilarious.
But just like,
do you get calls back from places?
I would get some opportunities, like at least like the beginning of it. Like I was always testing myself. Like, what's my value? You know what I mean?
You were like, yeah, on Thursday at 9:00, I wasn't to that position, but not so much right now.
But it's just like, yeah, some opportunity. I'd find a college that had like an outdoor director position, which you need like this special certification, but I'd apply anyway, just to see if they would get back to me. Yeah. And sometimes they would, like as an inquiry or whatever. So this was the same thing. I'm like, dude, let me apply to this thing. Like, I don't play the lottery, but my mom does. I was like, and she's never won, and I won't win either. There was no part of me, and I swear to God, that ever thought that I would actually get on a show, no matter what. It was no different than going to Wawa and buying a lottery ticket for $10 billion.
Yeah, of course.
I didn't do anything on TV. Like, I don't know anything about this. And truthfully, I wasn't even that good at survival. I was more of a mountaineering, rock climbing kind of guy with a lot of backpacking experience.
Okay.
I did teach survival and bushcraft. So I knew a good amount. So I apply, and this was in like June, end of June, and forgot about it and went back to school in the fall. And it's not like I was sitting there, oh, I hope they get back. Totally forgot about it because just like anything, like when
Yeah.
you apply for a job in New Zealand in June, you're not thinking about it in October.
Yeah.
Well, comes like January, I'm driving home one day, I get an email and they're like, hey, Jim, this is such and such from Malone. I'm like, what the? So I'm like, so I pull over and I start reading this email. I'm like, they asked me to, it was something like I was selected as like one of the people they want to look at. So I think I was in like the top 500 of these like 7,000 applicants roughly. And I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Out of 12 that make the show?
10 go on the show.
10 go on the show.
12 go to the show, 2 alternates.
Okay.
So anyway, it was a pretty big deal to get that email. And I talked to Jen. I'm like, yo, remember that thing? Did you even know? Like, I forget if I even told her that I applied like 7 months before that. So anyway, they're like, yeah, we want to do like a call. But we want to see some of your skills first. So just go out and like take some video and stuff like that. So I remember just going out and taking some like short video and like going all out though and sending it to them. And like, I was saying stuff that I didn't do. I'm like, yeah, eat crickets. And like, I'm like, I don't know, like just, I would eat a cricket and it's fine, but I'm not like living off of crickets. So I'm like, whatever. Like, this is what I think I need to be like to be on this show. Like you either like it or you don't, whatever. So I sent some stuff in and they're like, I don't know, a couple of days go by. Like, hey, we like what we saw. The producers want to like, do it like a Zoom or whatever it was called. It was probably Skype. By the way, what happened to Skype?
Skype kind of just fell off.
How did the pandemic happen and Skype went like that was the only thing that you ever knew about?
I get people that sometimes ask me if I want to communicate through Skype, and I'm like, I don't understand it because it's like, and if I don't understand, like I'm pretty savvy with a lot of this stuff, but Skype is weird because it always changes my username. I feel like it's back to like a Microsoft thing, and I think is Skype owned by Microsoft? I don't know.
I don't know. But
I don't know. It's confusing, but I try not to use that ever because it's older and I don't really.
I know, but when the pandemic happened, it's like I never heard of Zoom. I never heard of anything else, and it's like, well, Skype would be the one to step in, and Zoom, it's like they didn't. It's gone.
Yeah.
Anyway,
now they got gobbled up because Zoom and everybody else took the market shares.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you know more about that stuff than I do, but anyway, so I get this. I sit in this call. I don't even really remember it, but I'm like in my like spare bedroom, like I like put like a backpack behind me to try to look like it was like, not like a regular bedroom. And, I just was like, all right, I got to be myself, but I was nervous. And they're like, all right, Jim, you're down to like the top 50. We want to let you know that, but we need you to go out for like a couple nights and whatever. So I live in like the suburbs and I'm living in a townhouse. Like I don't live in the woods. I'm like, all right, well, where could I go? So I called my dad up in New Egypt, New Jersey. I was like, Dad, you gotta like, I'm doing this thing and like, I need a place to go, like where I could get dropped off. He's like, I got the place for you. So he drops me off in like some cranberry bog somewhere. I don't even know where.
I know exactly where you went. Patty and I went back there.
Yeah.
I know exactly.
He's like, no one will bother you back here. I'm like, all right, perfect. And he's like, see ya. So I went back there for like 2 nights and just like took a bunch of video, worked like kind of like probably prepared a lot to show that I could do stuff, even though it wasn't like second nature, which a lot of people applying to the show like already lived in like an igloo and like have been living this lifestyle their whole life, not me. So anyway, I sent him the stuff. Next thing you know, one thing comes to another. They're like, Jim, we liked your video. You made the top 20 and we're going to invite you to boot camp. So here's the problem. Number 1, I didn't know what boot camp was. Number 2, I had a full-time job. Like pretty much everybody else applying for the show is like, this is their ultimate. For me, I'm like, I can't leave. You can't just leave teaching. Like you can't just.
How long was the boot camp?
So the boot camp was 1 week.
So you have to call out for a week, I guess.
And you had to sign an NDA, so you couldn't tell them what you were doing. But how do you go to your HR department and say, hey, I got to go for a week, and you only get 3 personal days a year. I probably already used them. You can't take sick days; it's illegal. So I was like, I just went to them and said, I have a unique opportunity, blah, blah, blah. One thing led to another, they let me go. So
they were like, all right, Jim, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jim.
You can't tell us where you're going for a week.
Yeah. They made it they allowed me to go. And, so the tricky part about all this that I didn't mention yet is this coincided with my wife and I
Yeah.
being in the process of adopting 3 children. So I never expected to get on the show. So as we were going through the process of adopting children from foster care in Philadelphia, things kept going and going and going. And like every step became more real. And I'm like, well, we're adopting these kids. It just takes months to go through it.
Yeah.
The classes, paperwork, all that stuff.
Sometimes years.
Yeah, whatever. So, and we were long into that process, but it was like a collision course. And like, I'm right here, and here was boot camp, and the kids are so close. So I go to boot camp and I'm like, do I just say no to boot camp? Because if I don't go, then I don't have to worry about it. But Jen, again, is like, just go. This is like a once in a lifetime thing. Just see what happens. So then I roll into New York City. They pick me up, and it's like the game had already begun. It was already like you're friends, but you're not friends with the other contestants. It's like, hey, what's up, man? And in your head, you're like analyzing, like, oh shit, they're bigger than me. They have this like outdoor gear on that looks better than mine. And like it was such an ego fest.
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy. It was a brag. Like it was nuts. And you could tell like who was real and who wasn't. And there were people that had some major skills.
And there's Jim just grading tests.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Like I knew I could do it. It wasn't that, but I also wasn't in the same stratosphere as a lot of the people. But also like personality, I was confident. Like I was like, I can talk to people. Like I'm not like, you're really good at like carving those sticks, but you're kind of weird. I'm like, I'll be fine. Like I'll be fine. So it was just like a week of like all these little competitions that they put us in. They sent us out into the field for like 3 nights with these like British Special Forces guys. And they're like, all right, well, we're going to, dude, they did, I mean, the first night they're like, it was raining, it was cold. They're like, all right, go set up shelter. So we had to do that. And then like they're videotaping that. That was actually part of the show too. It was called Making the Cut. That was the actual first episode. So all the while, it's this whole test. It's like you're in this thing and you don't know where you are. You don't know where you stand. Like I seem to be doing fine at all the tests and stuff, but there were other people better than me and there were other people worse than me. And then all of a sudden they showed up with a truck of white rabbits. And I was like, what the fuck is this? I was like, what? And so we had to prove that we would be able to kill an animal and knew how to gut it. I didn't know how to do it. But I just kind of like, this is, I think goes back to like the things we were talking about earlier, like being able to adapt in the moment.
Yeah.
So what do you do in that situation? I've never killed a rabbit. You just say, I don't know how to kill a rabbit because I knew that was, he ain't making it. See ya.
Yeah.
Don't be first in line. Don't get the first rabbit. Kind of stayed back, kind of like, got my rabbit. And I'm like, this is awful. I don't want to really do this. And I had a moral like dilemma.
Yeah, I'm sure many people have.
But I'm like, all right, well, I got to kind of do this. Like, I'm not against it. I'm going to eat it. Like they make us whatever. So I was like, all right. So I just watched what a couple people did and I did it. Killed it, cut it up, skinned it. It's not that hard. You know what I mean? And like the dude next to me is from Alaska. Like people from all over the world. Dude next to me is like I don't know if he was like full Eskimo or not, but he's like boiling the head. He's like, yeah, he's like, I do this all the time. We always eat the eyeballs. I was like, I'm more of a ramen guy. But like, yeah. And honestly, it wasn't very good rabbit, but there were these huge white rabbits, some farm, like whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was just something that sticks out. They put you through all this like psychological testing. And then at the end of the week, they're like, all right, we'll let you know in a week. And you're like, okay, see ya. So then you go off and you're like, you have no idea. And a week goes by and I get a call on a Friday. I was in school. I was walking out to my outdoor classroom, checking my phone every 5 seconds. I'm like, this is the call. I look at my phone. I never have my phone on. Always have it off. But anyway, I got a missed call. I was like, what the I was like, how's our missed call? So I get, there's a voicemail. Hey, Jim, this is Heather from Left Field Casting. Just give us a call back if you get a chance. I'm like, a chance? I was like, so I'm walking out I get on the line with her. My kids, I could see them up in this long walk out to my outdoor classroom. And she's like, just want to offer you, one of the 10 spots on the show. I was like, not an alternate? She's like, no, we really like, she's like, you got to think about it. I'm like, okay. I was like, I'll call you back. So I was like, I hung up the phone and I was like, yeah. I was like, it was like a moment that I'll never forget. It was like something big just freaking happened that I worked for, that I don't know if I deserve, that is just going to happen. And, nobody knows that part of the story.
Yeah, of course.
The only thing people know is that when I ended up on the show, which is a whole nother thing, it was in Patagonia, South America. And I was like, where's that? But I actually knew where it was. It was somewhere I always wanted to go. I had just never been there. And then we get down there, find out the other people that are on the show. And long story short, I get out there. I'm feeling awesome. They drop me off in a helicopter.
Also, real quick,
yeah.
the time of year, it was pretty cold, right?
It was their winter, going into their winter. So the whole idea was harsh conditions, lots of snow, their winter, whatever. So, dude, I went from like making the show. I had, I think, 6 weeks to prepare until we left.
Not a lot of time. You dropped off in the middle of nowhere.
If you want to talk about, I know how you have told me before, how you like bought some course that was supposed to take like a year and you did it in like 3 days or something.
Yeah.
That was me in bushcraft and survival. I was like, I don't want to die.
Yeah, you got to figure it out.
Like, I got to figure this out. Like, I need to know everything. So I went nuts. I bought everything. I bought all the gear. Like, if I needed an axe, I would buy 3 axes. If I needed pants, I would buy 3 pants. Yeah. If I needed this mess kit cooking, I would buy 3 of them. I was like, I don't know what I need. So I was going nuts there, like figuring that out, watching every single video, reading every single book. So people will say, because I ended up not doing well on the show, but for anyone who calls me a loser, anyone who whatever they say, it's okay. But I 6x'd my knowledge of bushcraft and survival because of that opportunity.
Yeah, which is awesome.
It's crazy.
Going back to that stuff, that the real life practical knowledge when you're doing something in a real setting is going to speed up, especially if you put yourself in that position where it's like, figure it out type of scenario. You're going to speed up that knowledge and learn 3 years of whatever in 3 hours.
Yep.
And you're going to do that over and over and over. Especially yours is like an ultimate. Yours is like
death.
Yours is like you're literally dropped off in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
With no one else around. I mean, it's like
it's crazy.
The most severe case scenario you can think of. So
yeah, I mean the show itself. A lot of people are like, well, who did the camera work? It's like you did. Like they gave me that camera and a couple GoPros and like, all right, you got to take a lot of film and whatever. So that part sucked. And even though I only lasted 4 days, I hated filming it. Like it was not fun. When I was out there, very quickly, my mind after the second day, I was like, I hate this. I got to get out of here. Yeah,
but so just to point out, you didn't leave because of a hurdle with some type of physical element of it.
Yeah,
you were again going through that division of you having the ability to adopt 3 kids and you going through that process and for however many months, if not a year at that point. And then this coming into the equation at the same exact point. And it just was a brutal intersection of time.
A very brutal intersection of time. So when I left, when I got dropped off at the airport by Jen, they said this show could be up to a year. So it's like in my head, and all you have to do, if you outlast the other contestants, you get $500,000. There's only 10 of them. So it's like, that's in your head too.
Yeah. Okay. But people stay out there for like 100 days.
They do.
Like literally 100 days, they make a life out of that.
And some of them get close to, I don't want to say death, but they're not far from.
They're not what they look like when they came in.
No.
Not one of them.
No, except me. I was a little heavier. But no, it's weird because I don't, and I've, dealt with this for years. It's been like, I don't know, 7 years since I got off the show. Um, a lot of people will say, man, like I would have done the same thing, or I totally get it. You had such a great excuse to get off. Yeah, maybe. And I did what I had to do. I did in my head what my brain was telling me to do, get out of here. However, if that wasn't going on, I can't say with absolute certainty that I wouldn't have done the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Totally.
I like to think about it sometimes, man, like if I didn't have that force pulling me home, because my kids were moving in like that week, may it have been different? Possibly. Cause like you said, I was out there. I remember the second day I woke up and I'm like, let's go. I'm ready. Like I had no thought of like, I mean, when I say let's go, I meant let's go build a house.
Yeah.
Like I'm ready. Dude, that changed quick.
Wasn't that the first thing you did? Didn't you build shelter the first thing?
The first thing I did was when I got dropped off, I just explored a little bit. I built like a shelter for the first night, like a quick one. And then the second day that I was there, I don't know, I took down like 6 big trees and like built a teepee and
Yeah, I remember
built
you
a bed inside of there. And I'm like, this is awesome. And then I remember on the third day, the shelter was cool. I was like, I had millions of ideas of what I wanted to do, like exponential ideas. But on the third day, I'm like, it was raining and I was stuck in there. And I'm like, just here, I can hear it now, like dripping, drip, 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 drip. And it's getting dark early. It gets dark at like 3 or something, 4.
Wow.
And there's like that small window of light. And I'm like, just like depression was coming in. And I'm like, I don't have to be here. I don't want to be here. And I'm needed at home. It's like this whole thing of like, let's just get out of here. And knowing that once I press that button for them to come rescue me, my life will be forever changed.
Yeah.
In a possibly a pretty bad negative way that I'll have to like deal with. So it's tricky.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of things. I even think about it in business, right? If I had, and I think you can look at people like Elon Musk, right? I know that there's been case scenarios where clearly he has the opportunity to live in a $50 million home, $100 million home. It doesn't matter. He can live in the most lavish places, but he chooses to live in, and he has sold tons of his stuff to live in like a tiny home. And he has like an apartment, and I've seen pictures and different things like that.
Yeah.
But I think what it comes down to is, and I've thought about this myself, in life, you continue to build more and more things around your lifestyle. You buy a home, you have a wife or husband or pets or kids, and all of those things continue to compound and build the responsibilities that you have.
Mm-hmm.
If you minimize the responsibilities that you have, if you were 17 years old at the time and you didn't have Jen and you didn't have like an animal or animals, and you literally had nothing to really go back to because you just didn't have those responsibilities yet, that decision is dramatically different than all of the responsibilities that have compounded over the years. So for those people that have the ability to, and some of these are for straightforward reasons, and some of them are for upsetting reasons, right? People, they lose family members or they lose things in their life. But the less responsibilities that you have, the more likely you are to say, well, you don't have much to lose. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah.
How much do you have to lose?
Yeah.
And I think that's why you see people like right now, I think Conor McGregor in UFC, he's at a different position than he was in when he entered the UFC, right?
Yeah.
Like, in his early UFC career, he didn't have all of the things he had. Didn't have the money, didn't have the credibility, didn't have the record, didn't have all of these things. He had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
But now he has a lot to lose. And he has a lot of things that are pulling his attention in different ways. So he's not training the same. He's not doing the same things. Is he still a great fighter? Still a great fighter.
Yeah.
Still a renowned person in that field. And the champ of champs. Like, amazing. He's done amazing things. But the responsibilities have compounded.
Yeah, I've been seeing him lately. Like I saw him the other day, like driving a motorcycle, and some dude's like, "It's Conor McGregor." Did you see that one? I don't know.
I saw him the other day, like chugging some type of beer, on ringside chugging beer. Yeah,
yeah. Isn't it? I agree with what you said. And things change, but it's also funny how, like, just talking specifically about the UFC, how like things evolve in that way too. Like Conor McGregor at one point was like, no one will ever beat him. It's impossible. You can't beat him. And then, Khabib comes around and it's like, and no one ever did beat him. But like, he was the next thing. And before him, it was like John Jones. And like, there's always that person that no one can beat, but it always evolves and it always changes, much like our lives and our businesses. And
that's very interesting to think about. You can look at any type of sport. Sports is like the probably the most public way of seeing that.
It is.
But there's any athlete, Tom Brady to Jordan to Conor McGregor or John Jones or any of these guys, they hit a point in their career when they're the champ, or they're at their peak, and you do think that they're unstoppable. They're no one's going to beat them.
Yeah.
And then some type of way, someone does, and someone overcomes that, and then they hit their peak, and it's just this ever changing element of who's at the top.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's fun to like live in that moment though. Like I remember going back even to Mike Tyson when Buster Douglas knocked him out. Mm-hmm. Like no one's going to ever beat Mike Tyson. It's not even possible. Like if you looked at the odds of that fight of Buster Douglas beating Tyson, I think it was like 500 to 1 or something like crazy like that.
Sure.
It can't happen, but it did.
It does.
Yeah.
All it takes is just one thing, right? When it comes to fighting, it's like, it is literally one thing. Yeah. It's one wrong step from one person, one right step for the other person, and that perfect point in time. And that's it. It's a kick to the face and done. Fight's over.
You know, it's like going back to, I don't know, maybe even business or whatever. It feels like there's so many points that you can like give up. I know, with the podcast that I do, there were definitely times where I'm like, no one's listening to this. Like, I don't like, it's a struggle to get people on and like this and that. And then, you have moments of, I'm loving this and whatever. There are hard times. Like you really have to push through things. You have to like, there's always going to be moments of doubt. There's always going to be times where there's like pitfalls and you have to like really just keep going and grinding on the days that suck to like see what you're made of and see what like the potential is. Like look at your company. I mean, I'm sure, you're sitting here in your own podcast studio now, but 6 years ago, you didn't have this, you're here. And for someone like you, you're still not even like done. I know you're hungry and you're working, always working, moving towards something else. But I don't know, man, there's something to be said for like the people that are successful, like the drive that they have and not giving up.
And I think that's the reason for this podcast. And so it's a good last point to make before we wrap up today. All of those people working towards something, they don't stop because of whatever reason. Everyone has an independent reason that allows them to keep pushing forward. Mostly personal things that continue to drive them towards their goal. But I think that the biggest thing that they need to do is to show up. You showed up when you were going through that entire process to being on the show alone.
Yeah.
You showed up when you drop a weekly podcast. You show up when the kids need you at school and you're going to create a pivotal moment in their life that's going to create an experience that could drive them for the next 70 years of their life. And same thing with business. I show up to meetings. I show up to doing activities that allow our clients to have success, all of these things. Showing up and continuously taking action is going to drive you towards wherever you want to be. And it might be somewhere completely different than where you expected, but it's going to be somewhere a lot more grand.
Beautifully said, man. I don't think I could wrap it up any better way than that. But showing up is important, man. And I always said that too, like just even for my kids, like I might not be in the best mood all the time. I might not be the best version of myself, but I'm going to be there when you need me.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I love it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Dude, it's been a pleasure. My first real podcast. It's awesome.
Although you've already done 80 of them.
Yeah, in my basement.
Still, we're pleasure having you. And we're going to talk to you all these things about business, life, and the adventure. Thanks for watching.
Awesome. Thanks, Kenny.